One of the very best things about homeschooling your children, or helping to homeschool your grandchildren, is using everyday experiences and particularly nature to help teach them all their various lessons. When you're a prepper, you can gear those lessons to things that will teach them self-reliance skills, character development, independence, everything you want to do when you're educating the whole child. This looks just like a patch of weeds or wildflowers, whichever you prefer, at the end of one of our hay fields. But it actually can be far more than that from an educational standpoint. When you are teaching children multiple ages, which is often the case, you can incorporate one activity, one learning experience into multiple different age-appropriate activities. If you have little ones, you could use this type of an activity to learn about colors. You could give them a scavenger hunt, little sheet that you make up, showing the color yellow and purple and light purple and green, or any other color you can think of, and they have to find those. You can practice their writing and their spelling by writing down the color and teach them the name of the flower. They're a little bit older, you can do flower identification, and then a little bit older than that, you can be teaching them what the flower or weed or tree, which there's plenty of those around here, can be used for medicinally. If it's edible, but you do a wild foraging lesson. You can talk about the animals that might sleep in it, that might feed off of it, like the butterflies. And if you don't want it to grow, ways that you can kill it that won't harm your land, things that you can do to make yourself that can kill it, that can help make it grow, how to harvest it. You can pick some of the flowers or leaves and dry them to make your own identification booklet. There are just a multitude of things you can do while taking your kids outside to just a little wildflower and patch and tree lot like this and turn it into a reading, into a history lesson even. We're going to talk about the growth of some of these plants, whether they were native or they were introduced over along the years. Talking about how plants were grown in olden times as opposed to now. There's just a multitude of things you can do. You can work in science, you can work in reading, you can work in history, and you can definitely work in math. You can count the number of purple flowers and yellow flowers and do the difference between them. You can pick off some leaves and use those for manipulatives when you get back to your house, or lay them out on a log and do addition and subtraction. You can do which is smaller or larger, wider and narrower, to incorporate some vocabulary words and differences in them. There's just almost no limit to what you can do with just a simple little walk like this in your own property. If you're an urban or suburban prepper, you can go to a public park, to a state park. A friend who has some property will let you walk around. You can even do a field trip to your local farm or living history area where they are growing native plants and do your same lesson there. A little bit more prep work so you can know what's there before you go and make up an activity sheet or just a list of what you want to do. Learning definitely does not need to take place in a classroom, in a seat, or even with paper and pencil. This is one of our growing patches. Working in the garden together is one of my favorite and most fulfilling aspects of homeschooling. You, of course, can do lessons where the children are learning how to grow the seed and transplant the seed and grow their own food, and then learn how to harvest it, how to preserve it with canning and dehydrating. And depending on the age of the child that you're working with, they can participate at various levels in all of that. You can do spelling words, vocabulary words, from the gardening type of work that you're doing. And there's a host of great gardening books for children as young as toddlers, and then of course up to a more advanced level that you can read about and do whole learning units together. Because with the gardening you have science, obviously, and you can work in math. You can use seeds for counting. You can measure how deep of a hole that you're digging the dirt to plant the seeds. The children can work in writing by doing a journal, what they planted when, keeping track of the growth and how deep they had to plant it, companion plants, what bugs might eat off of them, how to make your own natural herbicides to treat them. You can make those together, which will include, a good bit of math because they're measuring. And we also have a fence constructed around this garden. It was corn and a few other things, and it's overgrown now. Everything's been harvested. It's getting ready to get plowed under. But we use, of course, cans and aluminum foil, and we use baling twine in between some posts. We tacked up bird netting. all different types of things. So you can discuss what animals you want to try to keep out, deer and rabbits, and what they eat, how they can get in. Do a lot of comprehension and thinking questions. Have the children help devise what things you can hang to make noise and reflective to keep the animals away, why that works. You can make a scarecrow together, and definitely have them dig holes and plant the post you're putting in, and do the stake and the tomatoes, and then stretching out the fencing, measuring the fencing, seeing how much you're going to need. Even if you have it all there, you can do it as a budgeting lesson, how much fencing that you need, figure out how much that would cost, get on a local website or a flyer, and so they can factor in a budget for the year, the cost of seeds, cost of supply for herbicides, and if you're running a tractor to do any of the work, how much the fuel would cost, how long does it take a tractor to go from one row to the next to plow, and the harvesting of potatoes, how long does that take by hand, the way it used to be done. Do some pioneer activities. If you live off grid or you also have manual types of farm equipment, either you use them now or you've stockpiled them for a shit hits the fan event, you can not only tell them the difference, but you can show them. And if you don't have that equipment, because you don't, or you're suburban or urban prepper, there's plenty of living history type museums and farms you could do a field trip to. The same with gardening. If you don't have one of your own, you could go and you could tour a garden, go to a you-pick berry farm, even an urban garden. There's plenty of opportunities. You could do a small scale garden in your backyard. It does not have to be this size. You can make some cold frames together to start your seeds, learning about sunlight, what plants grow in sunlight and shade, different types of soil, how to test your soil, how to enhance it, how to cultivate a compost pile. There's just a multitude of learning that you can do just from a garden. You could grow some herbs and lettuce, onions indoors, and have the gardening lesson, work year round. And they're learning how to grow their own food and be resourceful. And besides, with just the garden, you can incorporate the same type of lesson in with any livestock that you're raising or that you see on the farm that you visit. Talk about rendering tallow and lard, and about butchering, egg collection, what chickens might give the largest eggs, the most eggs, the difference between brown and white eggs, different free-ranging techniques, and how to build a chicken coop. And you can also do some of these activities as extensions to books that you read, activities that you're doing as hands-on training as part of your survival prepping retreat. Or you can do it from a craft version with some popsicle sticks and some foam or construction paper that's been glued to a styrofoam, rectangle piece you can get from a craft store fairly cheaply, and on paper or on felt, which is also very cheap. Draw or print off some different types of crops, let them plant them into the styrofoam to just see how you'd set up a garden with companion plants. You can get some little plastic insects or print off different types of pictures to show what insects might come in. You can go out and get the dirt out of your backyard, or anybody who has a yard, if you live in a city somewhere that you're allowed to dig a little bit of dirt. You can still do a soil test. So you can either do it in real life as part of their self-reliance learning, or you can do it as craft extension activity to a book that you're reading or a field trip that you took, to still help instill the same self-reliance skills while you're working on a math comprehension, any type of language arts with spelling, and even a history lesson, all in one group. You can make this a 2-3 week project, something you work on once a week, twice a week for several months during a growing season. Learning does not have to take place in different classes every hour or the same classes every day. You can tailor every different academic activity they're doing, including art and music, into one learning experience. Is also enhancing their self-reliance skills. Here's another section of woods along our farm road to get to the house. We use this for educational purposes pretty much year-round. Foraging every season, what we can find, identifying them, learning about their uses, why they're healthy, things that you shouldn't eat, how to identify good berries from bad berries, picking berries from our wild blackberry bushes, getting starts and doing it successfully off of a wild plant. We also do bark rubbings with the younger children. When we're cutting down firewood, we learn how to tell the age of a tree. We've cut branches that were left over from firewood or that have fallen because of a storm and make them into branch blocks. The older children learn how to use power tools. Those branch blocks are like ridiculously expensive from school supply stores and fancy toy stores online. They're basically branches you've cut with a bandsaw, and you debark them, or you leave the bark on. You use them in place of plastic blocks or wood blocks that are also expensive to buy. We go hiking up through the woods. We will measure the distance, the time it takes to go the distance. We learn about the different types of rock, finding your way in the woods. We also do maple tree tapping. Well, we do tree tapping. We do different types of trees. We compare the volume we get from each tree and try different types of syrup recipes. We make the syrup together, and then we'll make pancakes together. There's a nutrition lesson. There's a math and science lesson all rolled into one. We try to learn to be able to find our way at dark from down bottom all the way up top. And we will look for animal prints. There's none here today. No critters have been by, and the horses haven't. We'll try to differentiate one type of animal prints from another. We'll do this in the barnyard as well, especially the little kids, to keep it simple. And they will try to identify the billy goats from the nannies and the baby goats, and the horses and the mini donkeys, ones that are similar. We compare and contrast. We'll measure them. We'll make plaster casts. We'll paint them as an activity. Any type of handicraft that's also self-reliance skill, we will incorporate as part of breeding and science. I have one friend's child, a member of our tribe, who's very much into photography. And it's great if you can incorporate a natural interest into what you're learning. Learning should be an adventure, especially with homeschool. So she likes to take pictures. So we will incorporate that into learning about the different types of trees. She'll take them from different angles, different shutter speeds, different times of day or night. And take pictures of the branches up close and far apart, what lives on them, around them. If it's an oak tree, neat pictures with the acorns. Have another child who likes to make jewelry, so we will use different things we find in nature to make jewelry. Little kids will take things that are on the ground, we'll lay them out, and we will have a framed-in area with some fire logs, and they can create a scene or a picture, a smiley face, whatever, out of different items they found in the woods. Talk about the textures and the weight, where they came from, a way to reinforce learning the leaves and the bark. Sometimes they'll take some of the pieces and make a house out of them for gnomes or fairies that we made from pipe cleaners and felt and some wood beads. So there's all kinds of open-ended and basically child-led activities that you can do just from walking around your own woods or things you find in the woods. And again, if you don't happen to have woods on your property, you can go for a hike. Most state parks will allow you to pick a certain amount of things up off of the ground that have already fallen. You need to read the rules carefully so you don't get a big fine. But you can do these same type of activities with a little bit of pre-planning anywhere that you live, even if you don't happen to have multiple acres to enjoy them on. Near the shelter house on our survival homesteading retreat. As you can see, the children played with it a lot and didn't quite put everything away in the little garage that we made them underneath. But the reason I'm showing you this is because it was part of our homeschool learning. Even though adults did the biggest part of this, the children helped design what they wanted by drawing it out on picture to scale. And then we searched around the property for scrap materials that we could repurpose. And we discussed the importance of saving different materials and thinking outside the box in ways you can use them. And the children were involved in every aspect that was age appropriate. Older children could do power tools to help cut the pieces of wood that went up. Everybody helped dig the holes. We measured for the screen that went in, and that was used with a staple gun so children could help with it. And of course the painting. And the little kids who couldn't handle the power tools, they had their play power tools to go in and mirror the actions to help them learn some self-reliance and useful skills. Most everybody got the chance to use a hammer and nail, whether it was a toy one or a real one. And we talked about roofing and why it had to be slanted. And we put doors on it, and kids helped with the hinges and the doorknobs, even the younger ones. This is also going to double as an LPOP during a shit hit the fan event. So it's a multi-purpose type activity. If you don't have a backyard to build something this big or scrap materials laying around, to do it, you can do something on a smaller scale. There's all kinds of woodcraft and handicraft kits you can buy. You can just pick up some scrap materials, even if you're making something as simple as a garage for their toy cars or helping you build and repair steps. teaching how to use power tools and how to use manual tools in place of the power tools, even if the whole project isn't done that way for the sake of time, is also a great learning activity. You can discuss the difference in time that it took. There's measuring involved, reading directions, comprehension, learning how to use a level. There were multiple learning activities that went on with this. The children wrote about their experience. They drew pictures as it progressed. We charted the time and the types of materials used and why they were chosen. So they helped build their own playhouse as part of their homeschool activity and learned some great self-reliance skills in the process. This is our homeschooling classroom. It also doubles as a playroom. And bunk beds here, which are in the middle getting sheets switched around for grandkids when they come spend the night. This is a chalkboard wall in progress. The kids can do learning lessons in fun, colorful chalk instead of pencil and paper. There's plenty of open space in here because we do a lot of movement activities and learning and building and creating art projects to go along with what we're reading. They do have a table space for doing some seat work or for working on projects and puzzles. This is a covered wagon that we made out of some scrap fabric in a cardboard box. I took some leather rope that I had and we tied a horse to it because we were reading Little House on the Prairie books and doing extension activities, cooking, toys children played with, games children played, how to make candles, corn husk dolls. We did a lot of cutting and measuring and reading and making choices on what materials to use and compare them to what materials actually were used. We used wood. These are just a small sampling of the store-bought materials we use for homeschooling. I picked them all up either from the Dollar Tree, from yard sales, and a few from a local Christian craft store that has all kinds of closeouts and clearance. But the vast majority have come from the Dollar Tree, so they were $1. This was a yard sale bargain. These are Melissa and Doug. You can buy them if you bought it new. They're like $12 or $15. Great for young learners. It has a cat on one side, a dog on the other. They're all two-sided and has the letters here, so you can, there's an O. The children can search for the right letter and put them in. They get a little bit more advanced. This gets easy. You can tell them a particular caller letter. It's a nice self-guided activity for little ones if you're perhaps working with one of the older children. Oops, sorry about that. This is a wipe-off board from the Dollar Tree, practicing the alphabet, or you could give them certain words to spell of their spelling list. You can make your spelling and vocabulary words once they get past the age of the 100 or so Dolch sight words they need to learn, and start progressing with words from the books you're using for them to learn. You don't need a textbook to teach most things. You can find interesting books along certain topics. I'll be putting a link in this article to my 2 homeschooling pages on Pinterest. A whole section of books that you can either buy cheaply or get on loan from the library, all about seeds, wildflowers, life on a farm. There's a neat survival skills series for boys or girls rather, it's geared to boys, but maybe ages 9 to 12. And you can use those books to reinforce the character and self-reliance skills you want to learn while teaching reading and comprehension, spelling, vocabulary, so that kids could write their words on here. It's with wipe-off markers. You can get a pack of 4 or 5 wipe-off markers from the Dollar Tree. These are supplies I bought from Walmart. This is a letter set with stamping. I use this to help teach the youngest grandchildren how to spell their name and then spell simple words. Even the older kids would get a kick out of doing this, spelling things with different color stampers as a way to practice their spelling words. It's not quite so boring sitting there writing the word 5 times on a piece of paper. When I use it with younger grandchildren, I'll tell them their first letter of their name has to be in blue or green or whatever to help reinforce color recognition. Or they use the stamps to spell the color they're writing in, stamping in rather. And these also came from the Dollar Tree. They're just little mats. They came in a set for $1 with collars and shapes. Here's the collar ones. And here's the shapes. And they go along with those for the younger children. I bought these. I think this is 2 packages of little foam shapes and letters they can use. And I give it to them. They can work independently after you teach them. They find the circle, they place it on the circle one, the heart, the star. So that's another nice self-guided activity. You can put these in Ziploc baggies or little tubs, and they can get in the routine of pulling out certain self-guided activities while sitting at a table, picnic table, on the ground cross-legged, outside while you're working with the other children. These can also be used for color sorting. I've used these for math manipulatives if they're learning to count, do multiplication, subtraction, division, whatever you want. You'd have to buy several. I think this might be 3 different packs melded together at $1 a piece. You can also use for color recognition, patterning. You can take these and make a particular pattern for them to follow. These are all great activities that children can work rather independently on when they're little. This is a matching set. This came from a Family Dollar, but it was still $1. Different types of automotives. This is princessy, very girly. And they just turn them upside down like an old-fashioned memory matching game and turn them over and practice matching. I did this for some teaching of language with the younger children to see things they found colorful and interesting and practicing what they are and then practicing how to spell them, identifying the colors in them. These are some more Dollar Tree goodies. Some simple fun games like Crazy Eights and Go Fish and Old Maid teaches them following direction and sharing, besides identifying and learning all the different educational aspects that these were designed to teach. Numbers, just practicing a flashcard activity. And subtraction, so you don't need to have papers and printouts. You can do these. You can time the children how fast they can learn their math facts. Math is always important no matter where you're going to school. This was neat. I just saw this the other day. I'm going to get some more. It's a dice. It's a foam dice, and these are little wipe-off circles, and you're making up your own educational games or a spelling word they have to read and act out what the word is. Or you can put, we were practicing wild edibles and medicinals with the older kids, and I'd write ironweed or honeysuckle on it, and I'd throw it, and whoever caught it had to go and identify that. Or an oak tree. So you can make it something fun, kind of like a hot potato game for older children as well as activities for younger. This was just a simple $1 bingo game. You read a question and find the letter that is the beginning sound of the word dog. It's, first, second grade activity. So it makes it a little bit more fun. There's a money and a time-telling bingo like that one as well. Simple little clocks. It's a pack of 6, I think, for $1. And Monster Munch Math. It's just a fun little activity for a seated game, cooperative game. We do a lot of our math with measuring wood, measuring distance, just using rulers. We might set up an obstacle course, part of their physical education, or a hiking trail, something a bit more rugged. And they have to measure the inches, the feet, the yards, how tall a tree is, how big around a tree is, different things like that where you can incorporate it into a handicraft or a survival skill. If we're tanning leather, they may have to measure the leather into strips that we're going to cut. So you can work in your math quite easily with any type of mechanic construction, and definitely a kitchen activity if you're cooking. I got this at a yard sale. It's Craftsman Handy Book, and it has some really neat things in here with patterns and diagrams to follow. Here's making your own moccasins, hand loom. You can tell by the graphics it's a rather old book. I have a Boy Scout manual like this. Old doesn't mean bad. Old actually typically means good. How to make a little rug. You can incorporate this. Children can read it and have to comprehend it. You can talk about the materials used, if you can source them, how much they would cost, how these items could be useful every day in a disaster scenario, and you have to follow directions and do measurement and complete the project. You can find on the Pinterest links that I'm going to share lots of handicraft items on there that kids can learn by doing. I have some kits that I bought, about $1 a piece. One's a covered wagon, and the other video you saw, a covered wagon we actually made out of scraps. A Native American teepee, a little wood boat. Those are extension activities for some of the books we were reading. All pioneer era, which helps get our history in, and then talking about off-grid and pioneer type skills and tools. So we'll be making and using tools from that era, and also cooking outdoors and over a wood cook stove to learn how to make some of the meals and recipes that were included in those books. So we're getting our reading and our history and our math all rolled into one. In some cases also science, because we're talking about growing things and working with animals These are all various traditional activity books. You can find these at the Dollar Tree, Walmart, pretty well anywhere. For grade level is usually up to 6th grade. This is a rather thick grade 1 book. This came from that discount craft store that is local. They have all different types of actually seat work, nothing really self-reliance specific, typical type of work you would get at a public school. But if you get some of these for extra practice and kind of assess how the students, your children, are picking up the different skills that you're teaching them, the different concepts from the curriculum, you can buy these. And instead of buying those kind of expensive little sleeves you can put them in, go to your local dollar store or discount department store and pick up some clear contact paper and just cut it to fit, put a piece on each side, and you make it a wipe-off sheet where they can practice over and over.